Welcome back to this Teach Out on Gun Violence. I am Cheryl King. I'm a professor in the Department of Psychiatry at Michigan Medicine and the University of Michigan Depression Center here at the University of Michigan. My work is primarily in clinical child and adolescent psychology, where I focus on youth and young adult suicide prevention. For many years, I've been working with my team to improve our tools for recognizing elevated suicide risk, for improving our risk evaluation and assessment tools, and for developing and testing new intervention strategies to bring down suicide risk. So firearms, guns, account for just over 50% of all suicides in the United States. It does vary somewhat across the lifespan and for males and females, but overall it accounts for more than half of suicides. Among boys and young men and middle-aged and older men, it accounts for the majority of suicides across the lifespan, and at least 3/4 of suicides among older adult men and the elderly. I think the intervention that has gained the most traction regarding gun use is the restriction of lethal means for those who we know to be at elevated risk for suicide. So when we have tools to recognize suicide risk, or people share with loved ones, or they leave notes suggesting they may be at risk for suicide, we now know that in addition to encouraging them to get behavioral mental health services or alcohol and substance use services, and encouraging them to connect with others and learn new ways of coping, that it makes a lot of sense to remove their access to highly lethal means, such as guns and medications, drugs. You know, there are fairly substantial differences in the suicide rate across the United States, and we have some ideas as to why. For instance, in Northern California, many parts of Washington State, the West and the Northwest, we have relatively high rates of suicide and suicide by firearms. We think it's because in many of these areas there are more firearms, and also that there are often fewer behavioral health services. So in the West and Northwest, but also in rural areas, we have higher rates of suicide. We also have more firearm availability, and usually in the more rural areas, fewer mental health and behavioral health services.